Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to take a look at a color correction technique here in Photoshop. I'm primarily going to do this in LAB color space. So you might have heard me talk about Dan Margulis's LAB color space book on Photoshop TV, and if you haven't, it's just kind of been a hot topic lately. Just the overall color space or LAB color mode, just kind of been a hot topic, had a little bit of buzz around it lately, and it does offer some interesting alternatives to some of the things you do in Photoshop. So this is not really an advanced tutorial, although it does use the LAB color space. Honestly, all we're going to be doing here is adding a layer. We're going to run a couple of adjustments on it. So even if you're a beginner, I encourage you just to follow along here and try out the tutorial and see if it works for you. Alright, so I've got a photo open here, and the photo is kind of just a little bit dull. You can see the greens in the background. They don't look too green. I'm going to show you the before and after of what this tutorial will do for you. And this is before, and this is after. So it's got a lot more punch to it in the after version. So let's go back to our original photo here. So what we're going to do is just try to bring out some of the color here. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. So just click on the layer and you can just drag it down onto that new layer icon. And then I'm going to change this duplicate layer. I'm going to change the blending mode from normal. I'm going to go down to soft light. Now at this point, I'm going to switch over to the LAB color space. So let's go over to Image, Mode, and then down to LAB color. It's going to ask you if you want to flatten. I'm going to choose Don't Flatten. And now we're in the LAB color space. Now I'm going to go to the Channels palette, and you can see that we do have channels in LAB mode as well. They just look a little bit different than our RGB channels. But what we want to do here is click once on the A channel. Now we're going to do some correction tricks here. You're not going to be able to see it on the photo until after we're done, but we're going to bring up levels. I'm going to press Control, Command on the Mac, and the letter L. That's going to bring up the levels dialog box. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the left and the right points here in toward the center where this bar graph starts to kind of spike up. So let's bring the black slider in towards the center, and then let's do the same thing with the white slider. And then we'll click on OK. And then I'll do the same thing on the B channel and just press Control L. And we'll bring the black point in toward the center, and then we'll bring the white point in toward the center. And I'll press OK again. Now I'm going to click once on this LAB channel, the top one, and you can see that's what the photo looks like now. So if we go back into our layers palette, you can see where we're at. And you know, it looks good here, but we definitely brought out a little bit too much color in some places. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go back over into RGB mode. So I'm going to choose Image, Mode, RGB color. And again, I'm going to choose Don't Flatten here because I don't want to flatten these layers together yet. Now that I'm back in RGB mode, we can start to work on some of the problems we see in here. And you can see we've got some red splotchy areas on the skin. I kind of like the color in the background, but the skin's got some red splotchy areas. And then the photo overall has a blue tint to it. Well, here's the thing. This is where kind of the advanced part of this trick comes, and that is we're going to go into hue saturation. I'm going to press Control U. And we're going to selectively start removing areas of color in the photo, but it's not always going to be the same for your photo. So you're going to have to look at your photo and just determine if there are any areas in the photo that kind of need to be pulled back a little bit. So I know that there's definitely some red or magenta areas here. So I'm going to go under Edit. I'm going to go down to Magentas. And I'm going to take the saturation slider and start moving it to the left here. And you can see as soon as I do that, watch the difference here. This is before and this is after. So we've really gotten rid of a lot of those magenta, that red splotchy area. And then next, I'm going to go to blues. I'm going to try to remove some of that blue tint here. Let's take this saturation slider, and we'll start bringing that over. And now look at that. That looks a lot better. See, we got that blue color cast out of there. So at this point, you're pretty much done. Just click OK. And now the last thing you may want to do is just to try to get rid of any of that overall color cast. Generally this looks pretty good, but you might have to adjust the opacity here, and this is where your taste comes in. I generally take this down somewhere between 40 and 50%. You don't want to do too dramatic of a change here. Now let's just take a look at the difference here. That's before and that's after. If you take a look at the skin looks a lot more lifelike here, the hair color, and especially this color in the background. It all looks a lot better. So again, this is before, and this is after. So really the photo packs a lot more punch than it did before. That's pretty much all there is to it. So again, I encourage you to experiment with it. Mind you, this is not the only way to do color correction in Photoshop. This is just one of the ways that you can do it. And really, it's kind of just putting tools in your toolbox here. So you can experiment with all the different methods here, and you can figure out which ways work the best for you. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks.